Bach lived at a time when the world of music was in transition. Prior to Bach's time, most music was written for church use, and then after Bach's time, most music was written for concert use. And so Bach lived at a time when both uses were in full swing, which is part of the reason why there is so much music that he wrote, because he would write a lot of church music, and he wrote a lot of concert music too. The Brandenburg Concerto, for example, that was used for concert use. But today I want to focus on another piece that Bach did, another type of music that he did as well. He composed a lot for choir, and so I want to talk about his cantatas today and give you a couple examples of that. So the first one is titled Wachet auf, which is just the first words of the German text that are being sung, and it's one of his finest cantatas for sure. What a cantata is, it's a work for a choir, usually soloists as well, vocal soloists, and an orchestra. And it's usually structured together by a narrative or a story, really. Now, he composed a lot of cantatas. Most were used for churches, but others were actually composed for concerts. So another one that I want to mention today is what we call his coffee cantata. The reason we call it coffee cantata is because the subject is about coffee. And so it was performed at Cafe Zimmermann in Leipzig, Germany. It obviously has some unique subject matter being about coffee, but I think all the parents can relate to jumping for joy when you get that first cup in the morning, right? I know I can. It's still a really enjoyable example of a cantata. It doesn't use a choir though, it uses just the soloists. There's several of them. And anyways, as you listen to these with your kids, one of the big things to overcome is the language, because they're written in German, they're sung in German, and if you're like me, you don't understand German. So when we're listening to classical music and there's singing involved, the first thing that we have to overcome is hearing it sung in a classical style, which is actually a lot different than the way we sing today in popular music. It takes some getting used to. The more you listen to it, the easier you'll be able to hear it and to appreciate it, really. Then second of all, of course, is the language. What do you do when you don't understand what's going on? Well, do a little Google search and see if you can find a good translation of it. There's usually translations for the more famous works, especially of Bach's. Second of all, you don't necessarily have to understand the language in order to enjoy the music. Remember, the voice is an instrument. It's a very personal instrument because it's built into us, and everybody has one. And so think of it as an instrument, especially like with the choir. We were talking yesterday about how the melodies would weave together during the pieces of the different instruments. And so same thing happens with the choir. There's frequently 4 different parts being woven together. And if there's soloists, there's up to 8 different parts sometimes. So I encourage you to listen to these cantatas today. Give them a try. I know I'm stretching you a little bit with this one, but again, this is an important part of classical music. And so I want to make sure that I'm exposing you to all these good things. So give this a try with your kids. See what they think about it. Form opinions. That's one of the things that we do when we're listening to classical music. And especially ask your kids, well, what did you think about that? All right. Bye-bye.